Alright everyone, we're getting reports that Steve Bannon is actually proposing the concept of hiking the tax rate by a few points on the wealthiest Americans in order to pay for a slew of significant tax cuts for the working and middle class. And I have to say, from a strategic standpoint, excellent. Would definitely rob a lot of middle-class Democratic voters back to the GOP. In fact, it would undercut the entire Democratic line because the fiscal side, the idea of Republicans only care about the rich, which is sort of falling out of favor anyway because all the rich people were funding Hillary Clinton. That would be the death knell of that. The Republican Party, if they listen to Steve Bannon's tax proposal, if nothing else, would actually become the true working-class populist party of the U.S., as opposed to the Democrats that would become basically the party of globalism and war and things like that. It'd be a total flipping where the GOP casts aside 90% of the issues it consistently loses on and forces them on the Democratic Party. But the basic structure is Trump has already spoken of lowering the business tax rate to 15% from the draconian 30+% that it's at now. When he suggested this, I came out in support of this, not because I like corporations, but because a lot of the largest corporations pay zero. You've got to understand that the businesses that end up paying that high tax rate are businesses that don't have the army of lawyers and accountants necessary to take advantage of all the write-offs and other loopholes that exist within the tax code. But if you simply lower it to 15% and get rid of all of that other legalese, nobody needs the army of lawyers anymore. A few simple write-offs, that's it. They pay 15% and they're done. Essentially what would happen is a small business that right now pays 30–35% in business taxes would only pay 15%. And the self-employment tax, I'm assuming, that's bundled up with the business tax rate for many intents and purposes, might go the way of the dinosaur. If that happens, by the way, I feel great because I have to pay that self-employment tax too, because I'm kind of a small business unto myself being self-employed. Meanwhile, you lower taxes on the working middle and I would say even upper middle class, people who are making, $100 grand a year or something, and simply hike the rate a couple percentage points on the hyper wealthy who can afford to pay a little bit more. Although personally, I would say simply cut a bunch of bureaus, but I assume that you'd have, if you're going to offset the business tax rate, you're getting more revenue from the multinational corporations, but you're also losing a lot of revenue potentially from small and regional businesses, entrepreneurs, and the self-employed. I think that's a better structure for the economy. What would happen is costs in this country would presumably drop. Wages would probably rise at least a little bit. And the people in that middle that has been shrinking, suddenly it would begin to expand again because businesses could afford to hire more people. We could export more products. The economy would begin to, I think, heal very quickly. For a few years, you'd end up adding to the deficit. But then again, there are those, link in the description lists this as a legitimate point. Before, in the past, anytime someone tries to cut taxes in order to restructure the economy, the deficit begins to rise and nobody gives it time to potentially solve itself and see if the deficit ends up going away because the economy simply starts to churn ahead faster. Nobody wants to take a look at that. You could also freeze government spending, and if you really are worried about that deficit, there are bureaus that we can cut within the United States. But I strongly support the proposition, if we're giving relief to people who actually need relief, if that necessitates raising the tax rate on people who are making $500,000, $1 million a year by a couple of points, I don't think that that's going to break the bank for them. Meanwhile, you're more than making up for it in terms of extra spending power and wealth and livelihood for literally tens of millions of Americans who fit into the working and middle class. The lower class, presumably, some of those individuals will end up rising up to the working, lower middle, or true middle class, which now has more tax relief. There'd be a reason to work towards that too. A lot of times I have a feeling people who are very poor, they don't bother to seek that new form of employment simply because there's really no option for them to do so. There's no way for them to get into those middle classes. I think this could provide the means for some millions of them to do so. It would literally be a Morning in America Again situation. It would be wonderful. I support Steve Bannon on this. You don't have to care about some of his other views. It's not really, this particular issue doesn't even have to do with the globalism versus nationalism debate. It simply has to do with the economy doesn't work. Multinational firms pay nothing. Small businesses get hammered. It suppresses the growth of the middle class. That's the Obama and Bush economy that we're dealing with. Doesn't work. Got a couple of idiot neocons who just wanted to throw kickbacks to some global bank, some corporation with its parent company operates in 17 different nations. We need to solve that problem. We need to focus on people here, the actual working class. And if Trump can get this passed, if it can be accomplished through a combination of cuts and perhaps a slight tax hike on the wealthy, the Republicans will not only win in 2020, they'll probably go on to totally scramble the Democratic Party. It's not entirely clear what form the Democrats would be able to take. If they can't undercut the Republicans on economics, how are they supposed to win? All they've got are the same wedge issues they lost on the last time around. It would destroy their basic platform by taking the economy totally out of their field. They would be uncomfortable, I think, with the fallout. As the economy improves, they would have to face the fact that the Republicans are now the sane party economically. That's about all. Peace out.